Willow Creek High was a typical high school, nestled in a quiet suburban neighborhood. It was the kind of place where everyone had their roles: the athletes, the cheerleaders, the nerds, and then there was her. Olivia Morgan was a newcomer to Willow Creek High. She had just transferred from a school in the city and was still trying to find her place. What made Olivia stand out was her calm demeanor. She wasn't loud. She wasn't trying to make friends or fit in. She simply moved through the hallways as if the chaos around her didn't exist. She was a striking girl, but not because of her appearance. It was her quiet confidence that caught people's attention. Olivia didn't engage in the usual high school drama, and that made her both a mystery and a target. Natalie Hayes was the queen bee of Willow Creek. With her blonde hair, flawless makeup, and a group of loyal followers, she had ruled the school for years. Everyone knew to steer clear of her. And if you didn't, well, you'd soon find yourself at the bottom of the social ladder. Natalie enjoyed control over what people said, who they hung out with, and who had the right to exist in the world of Willow Creek. She made life miserable for anyone who stepped out of line. She didn't care for rules, only her own twisted version of them. And Olivia, being new and different, was exactly the kind of person Natalie didn't want around. Olivia sat at a lunch table by herself, looking out the window, lost in her thoughts. She had made it through the first day without any major incidents. But she could feel the eyes of the student body following her. She wasn't sure if they were curious or if they had already written her off as weird. It was during the second day that Natalie first approached Olivia. She walked in with her usual entourage of girls trailing behind her like loyal subjects. With a smirk on her face, Natalie slid into the seat next to Olivia without asking. Well, if it isn't the new girl," Natalie said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Aren't you just special, sitting all alone in the cafeteria? Don't you want to fit in? Or is this your thing, acting all mysterious and above it all?" Olivia looked up from her lunch and met Natalie's gaze. Her expression calm, unfazed by the obvious hostility. She didn't feel the need to respond to the taunts. "No, thank you, I'm good," Olivia replied, her voice soft but firm. Natalie raised an eyebrow. "Oh, you think you can just ignore me and it'll all go away? This is Willow Creek High. Sweetheart, you don't just not fit in here." But Olivia, not one for confrontation, simply stood up, gathered her things, and walked away. She didn't feel the need to prove anything to Natalie or anyone else. It didn't take long before rumors about Olivia started to spread. She was cold, distant, strange. People whispered about how she didn't try to be part of their world. To the students at Willow Creek, that was a dangerous thing. Natalie had her eyes on Olivia now, and she wasn't going to let her get away without making her pay. Olivia walked down the hallway, her eyes glued to the book in her hands. She had grown so used to the eyes on her every step that it barely registered anymore. But today, something was different. The air felt thick, charged with tension, as if the whole world was holding its breath. As she neared the corner, she spotted Natalie and her crew waiting, clearly ready to pull something. Olivia didn't falter. She kept her pace steady, her face still, her gaze fixed on her book. "Well, look who finally decided to show up." Natalie's voice rang out, loud enough for everyone to hear. The mocking tone was unmistakable. Olivia didn't even glance up. She kept walking, undeterred. Then it happened. Lila, one of Natalie's loyal followers, subtly extended her foot into Olivia's path as she walked by. Olivia stumbled for just a second, but in an instant, she regained her balance, not even bothering to acknowledge Lila or the others. Laughter rippled through the hallway, but Olivia showed no reaction, her face betraying nothing. When she finally reached her desk in class, she felt it, something sticky and unpleasant under her. She sat down, instinctively recognizing the sensation. Without flinching, she stood up, peeled the gum off the chair, and tossed it in the trash. Then she sat back down, calm as ever, as if nothing had happened. From the corner of her eye, Olivia saw Natalie and her group watching her, waiting for her to snap. They wanted a reaction, any reaction, but Olivia didn't give them the satisfaction. Finally, she turned to face them, her gaze still cool, but now there was something more, an edge of challenge. "Anything else?" The room went silent, not because Olivia had done anything particularly dramatic, but because they realized she didn't need to. The silence spoke louder than any words. Natalie's smirk faltered for just a second. and the satisfaction she usually got from tormenting others slowly slipped away. Olivia didn't wait for a response. She turned back to her desk and resumed her work, her quiet confidence more unsettling than any confrontation. The next day, Olivia walked into school with her usual calm demeanor. Nothing had changed in the way she carried herself. She knew Natalie and her group weren't going to let yesterday's little challenge slide. But she wasn't expecting anything less. Just as she predicted, Natalie wasn't the type to back down easily. Throughout the morning, the group trailed Olivia, silently waiting for their chance to make a move. By lunchtime, Olivia entered the cafeteria and sat at her usual spot, unaffected, keeping her usual stoic attitude. But today, something felt different. As she settled into her seat, a loud crash echoed through the room. One of the chairs beside her had been pushed over, causing a distraction. Olivia barely flinched. Across the room, Natalie and her crew watched, their eyes glinting with amusement. Olivia didn't react. She calmly straightened the chair, sat down, and went about her lunch as if nothing had happened. "Wow, impressive." Natalie's voice rang out, loud enough for Olivia to hear. "Looks like you haven't learned your lesson from yesterday." Olivia said nothing. She didn't even look up at Natalie. She simply kept eating, her indifference palpable. The silence in her reaction only seemed to agitate Natalie more. She had been hoping for Olivia to snap, to react, to at least show some sign of anger or fear. But Olivia wasn't playing by the same rules. She didn't flinch, didn't raise her voice, didn't retaliate. She just went on with her life as if Natalie and her gang didn't even exist. After a long moment, Natalie couldn't take it any longer. She stormed over to Olivia's table, pulled out a chair, and sat directly across from her, staring at her with eyes full of irritation. "So, what exactly do you think you're doing?" Natalie sneered. "Who do you think you are? Acting like you're above me?" Olivia finally looked up, her gaze cold, detached, but not afraid. "I'm not thinking about anything. I just don't waste time arguing with people who aren't worth it." Natalie's teeth clenched. She couldn't stand being disregarded like this. The feeling of being belittled by Olivia's calmness drove her crazy. She stood up, her voice low but seething with rage. "You just wait. You'll be the one who's bowing down. Not me." Olivia didn't reply. She simply went back to her meal, finishing it with the same serene composure. It was as if the whole world could be falling apart around her. And she wouldn't even blink. Natalie stood there, seething, her hands clenched into fists. The laughter around her felt like a slap in the face. She had just tried to make Olivia stumble, humiliate her in front of everyone. And yet, Olivia had acted like it was nothing. Not a single flinch, not a hint of discomfort. It was as if she had anticipated it. And that pissed Natalie off more than anything. "Is that all you got, Natalie?" Olivia's voice cut through the tense silence, her words calm and controlled, each syllable sharper than the last. "You really think I'm going to bow down just because you pulled some petty stunt?" The crowd was hushed now, but Natalie could feel the heat of their eyes, judging her, almost daring her to do something, anything, to regain control of the situation. She couldn't stand the thought of Olivia making a fool out of her. Not now, not after everything she had done to dominate this place. Natalie's eyes narrowed, her lips curling into a cold smile. This time, she wouldn't just make Olivia trip. She needed to do something that would break her. Something that would make Olivia realize that she wasn't untouchable. That no one was. She wasn't going to let Olivia walk all over her. Not after this. "All right then," Natalie muttered under her breath, more to herself than to anyone else. She turned on her heel, eyes scanning the room, calculating. She could feel the weight of everyone's gaze, waiting for her next move. That's when she saw it, the janitor's cart, just a few feet away. It was just the thing she needed. With a quick, subtle motion, Natalie made her way over to the cart. No one saw her slip something from the cleaning supplies bag into her pocket. A few seconds later, she was back beside Olivia, who still hadn't moved from the spot, looking just as unbothered as before. Without warning, Natalie reached out and dumped a small amount of liquid, barely noticeable, onto Olivia's seat when she wasn't looking. The liquid was a concoction of something that would make her clothes stick and stain. Something that would humiliate her in front of everyone. It was subtle, almost too subtle, but it would be enough. Olivia wouldn't even know what hit her. As Olivia finally sat down, the room seemed to freeze. Everyone was watching, waiting to see what would happen. For a moment, nothing changed. Olivia looked calm as ever, adjusting her seat as if she hadn't noticed anything unusual. Natalie felt a surge of satisfaction, until Olivia's eyes lifted, meeting hers with a look that sent a chill down her spine. "You think this is going to bother me?" Olivia asked, her voice smooth, too smooth, with an underlying edge. She stood up slowly, as if savoring the moment, and then casually turned to the group, who were still waiting for something to unfold. "Care to explain to everyone why my seat's wet, Natalie?" Olivia's words were quiet but carried a weight that felt like a challenge. Natalie's stomach twisted, and the whispers around them began to grow louder. Olivia didn't seem flustered at all. She didn't even look angry. In fact, she looked bored, just like before, like nothing had affected her. And that was when Natalie realized, the harder she tried, the more Olivia made her look pathetic. She was in a game she couldn't win. She wasn't just dealing with someone who was calm. Olivia was a force of nature, too focused to be broken. Natalie clenched her jaw. It was clear now, Olivia wasn't going to break. Not the way everyone else had. Not like Blake. And that realization stung more than any prank ever could. It was the final period of the day, and Olivia was barely holding it together. She had been fine earlier. But as the minutes ticked by, an uncomfortable feeling in her stomach began to grow. She tried to ignore it at first, but it quickly turned into a sharp, undeniable pain. Her face flushed as she shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She raised her hand, hoping for a quick escape. "Yes, Olivia?" the teacher called, looking up from the lesson. I'm not feeling well. Can I please go to the bathroom?" Olivia asked, her voice strained as she tried to hide the discomfort. The teacher nodded, gesturing toward the door. "Go ahead, make it quick." Olivia barely waited for the confirmation. She grabbed her things, stood up quickly, and hurried out of the classroom, clutching her stomach. Her feet moved faster than her mind. She was focused entirely on the pain and the desperate need to get to the bathroom. When she reached the hallway, she didn't stop to check if anyone was around. Her body moving on autopilot, she headed straight for the nearest bathroom, hoping she could make it in time. Inside the bathroom, she rushed into a stall and slammed the door shut. The pain in her stomach hadn't subsided, and she leaned against the cold tile wall, trying to catch her breath. After a moment, she sighed, relieved that the worst of it seemed to be over. But as she reached for her bag to grab her phone, she froze. Her phone wasn't in her bag. Her heart skipped a beat. She had left it in the classroom. With no other choice, Olivia sighed again, planning to head back as soon as she could. But just as she started to gather her things, the sound of a door slamming shut echoed in the bathroom. Olivia's heart dropped. She looked up to see someone she didn't recognize standing at the door, a smirk on their face. The stranger locked eyes with her, and without saying a word, walked toward her stall. Olivia's instincts screamed at her to run, but she was stuck. Before she could make a move, the lights flickered, then went out completely, plunging the bathroom into darkness. The stranger was gone. Olivia stood frozen for a moment, her breathing shallow. Then, she slowly began to pound on the bathroom door. "Hello?" she called, hoping for someone to hear her. But no answer came. Olivia sat there, cold and restless, her stomach growling with hunger. At first, she had believed that this was just some sort of warning, a prank. Perhaps, she'd sit here for a little while, and then someone would come and let her out. But as time stretched on, her confidence began to wane. It was now after school hours, and the hallway outside was quiet. The soft echo of footsteps no longer reached her ears. She glanced at the door every few minutes, expecting someone to walk by. But no one came. Her phone, still sitting forgotten in her bag back in the classroom, felt like a distant lifeline now. If only she had it, she could at least call for help. Without it, she was alone, trapped in a cold, silent bathroom. The minutes dragged on, then hours. As the shadows lengthened, the cool air inside the bathroom seemed to become more biting, a cold that made her shiver uncontrollably. Her stomach ached from hunger. She tried to push through it, thinking it couldn't be much longer. But the longer she sat there, the more her body rebelled against her. The cold stung at her skin, and her mind began to cloud over with a mix of frustration, fear, and exhaustion. By the time the sky had darkened completely, and the last of the light was gone, Olivia was starting to lose hope. She couldn't understand why no one had come yet. Was this really just a game to them? Why hadn't they come to let her out? Her body began to feel heavy, as though it was made of lead. She tried to stand, but her legs were too weak to hold her up. She stumbled, then slumped back against the cold wall, dizzy from hunger and cold. The hunger gnawed at her insides, but it was the cold that was winning, chilling her to the bone. Olivia's vision blurred as exhaustion took over. She clutched her arms around herself for warmth, but it did little to help. She was too tired to stay awake, and despite her best efforts, everything became a blur. The last thing she remembered was the cold floor beneath her. And then, nothing. Olivia woke up in the hospital, her vision blurry for a moment before she started to make sense of her surroundings. The pain and exhaustion made her close her eyes again, but when she opened her eyes once more, the cold feeling in her body was replaced by the warmth of a blanket. She looked around and realized she was in a hospital room, the white walls and the constant hum of machines filling the space. The sterile smell of disinfectant made her uncomfortable, but it was then she realized she was being cared for. A doctor walked in, his face concerned. "Hello, I'm the doctor. How are you feeling?" he asked gently. Olivia took a deep breath, trying to regain her composure. I don't understand what happened. Please, I want to know, who helped me?" The doctor looked at her before speaking softly. "A student went to the restroom early this morning and found you in there. You had passed out from exhaustion and the cold. Luckily, they called an ambulance in time." Olivia couldn't believe what she was hearing. A surge of anger built up inside her. She had been left alone for an entire night, and no one cared until she was on the brink of collapse. She was furious thinking about the group of students who had caused all of this. The people behind this, especially the one who orchestrated it all, Natalie. The so-called queen of the school. The person Olivia had never bowed to. Of course, no one did anything until it was too late. Olivia muttered under her breath, gritting her teeth. She didn't know who had found her, but she was sure they had helped her just in time. But that was pure coincidence. They didn't help her because they cared, it was just out of necessity. But Olivia couldn't let this go. Although she didn't know everything yet, she was sure there were people who needed to pay. "If I can stand after I get out of here, I will do everything in my power to expose those people," Olivia vowed silently, her fists clenched tightly. As Olivia lay in the hospital bed, the anger within her began to rise again. But this time it felt different. It wasn't just the humiliation or the pain, it was the realization that she had been underestimated, used, and treated like a toy in their cruel little game. And she wasn't about to let them get away with it. She clenched her fists tightly, staring at the ceiling as her thoughts spiraled. The thought of the group, especially Natalie, kept gnawing at her. They thought they could break her. They thought she was just a quiet, overlooked girl, but she was about to show them exactly who she was. Her father's face flashed in her mind. The man who had raised her. The man who had built an empire from nothing. His towering presence had always been a source of strength, a reminder of the legacy she came from. And Olivia knew that the life she had, the life she was living, wasn't like the others. She came from a world far beyond the petty rules they tried to enforce at school. Her father, a powerful businessman with influence that extended across industries, had always encouraged Olivia to carve her own path. He had never asked her to conform to the expectations of others. If anything, he had taught her to challenge those who underestimated her. And now, she was ready to challenge them all. When she was discharged from the hospital the next day, Olivia walked out with a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't just a victim anymore. She was going to turn the tables. And she was going to do it with everything she had. The people who thought they could treat her like an outsider, like someone they could push around, would soon learn the hard way that Olivia wasn't the type to back down. Natalie and her group may have money and status in their small bubble. But Olivia's family had power that extended far beyond that. They were wealthy in ways they could never comprehend. And Olivia had every intention of using that power to take back what was hers, to force respect and dignity where it had been taken away. She wanted to challenge herself, to experience life in a way that pushed her beyond her limits. That was why she had transferred to this school in the first place. She thought she would have to face challenges. But she hadn't expected this. It didn't matter anymore. She was going to confront it head on and show them that no one, no matter how powerful, could break her. Natalie, Blake, and the rest of them? They would soon understand just how much they had underestimated Olivia. Olivia wasted no time. She knew exactly what she had to do. She didn't need to play games anymore. It was time for revenge. She wasn't going to let the people who had tormented her get away with it. They would pay, and they would pay dearly. The first target, Natalie. Olivia used her family's influence, calling in a favor from her father's business contacts. It wasn't long before she had solid evidence of Natalie's father's shady business practices, corruption, fraud, the works. Olivia had enough to get him fired from his high-ranking position at a prestigious firm. She made sure the evidence reached the right people. And within hours, Natalie's father was out of a job. The next step was Blake. Olivia wasn't going to let him off easy. She knew his weakness, his pride. She made sure to leak rumors about Blake's real character, showing how he had been manipulating the students and using his father's connections for personal gain. The whispers spread fast, and soon the entire school was buzzing about Blake's unsavory behavior. The school board started questioning his father's actions. And before long, Blake found himself in a meeting with the board, where his father's job and reputation were at risk. Olivia watched from a distance, satisfaction building as she saw their world begin to crumble. She had given them a taste of their own medicine. They were no longer untouchable. They were nothing more than pawns in her game now. Olivia had set everything in motion, and now it was time to execute her plan fully. She wasn't stopping with just Natalie's father. No, she would make sure Natalie herself suffered the consequences of her actions. Olivia made sure that the school board received a detailed report, one that included a well-documented history of Natalie's bullying and manipulation. She was ruthless in how she exposed everything, how Natalie had been part of the group that harassed her, how she had stood by and allowed the cruelty to happen. Olivia didn't hold back. She made sure that the whole school knew the truth. Soon, Natalie's reputation at school was tarnished. Students who had once been too scared to stand up to her now saw her for who she truly was, a coward hiding behind her father's wealth and influence. But Olivia wasn't done yet. She made sure Natalie received the worst possible punishment, expulsion. The school could no longer afford to ignore the damage Natalie had caused. She was a liability, and the administration couldn't risk the fallout from her actions. The expulsion was a public spectacle, and Olivia made sure it was announced during the school assembly, in front of everyone, so Natalie could no longer hide behind her status. As for Blake, Olivia didn't stop at just exposing his father's shady dealings. She made sure Blake knew the pain of losing everything he thought was his. She leaked information to the school board about Blake's manipulation, the way he used his father's position to control the student body. She made sure the truth about him came to light. And soon, the whispers about his behavior started affecting his father's standing at the company as well. Blake's father, under intense scrutiny, faced a possible demotion, and Blake himself was suspended for the rest of the semester. Olivia watched it all unfold with satisfaction. She had made them all pay. Natalie was out of the school, humiliated and alone. Blake, once the king of the school, had been brought low. No one was untouchable anymore, not even the privileged and powerful. Natalie sat alone in the empty hallway, her eyes staring blankly at the floor. The reality of everything that had happened was sinking in, and it was worse than she could have imagined. Expelled, humiliated, the power she once held had crumbled into dust, and the silence around her only amplified the feeling of dread that was gnawing at her. She had always been at the top, always the one everyone feared and admired. But now, she was nothing. Her friends had abandoned her. The whispers that once followed her in admiration now mocked her. Olivia had turned her world upside down. And Natalie finally understood. Olivia wasn't just any girl. She wasn't someone to mess with. The realization hit her like a ton of bricks. Olivia's family wasn't just powerful, they were untouchable. The wealth and connections Olivia had access to were beyond anything Natalie could have imagined. She had thought she could push Olivia around. But in the end, it was she who had been crushed. And it wasn't just Olivia's intelligence or cunning that had taken her down. It was the truth of who she was and who her family was. Desperation settled in. Natalie knew she had no one left to turn to. She had burned all her bridges. Her father's job was on the line. Her reputation in tatters. If there was even a chance to survive this, it had to come from Olivia. With trembling hands, Natalie stood up and made her way toward Olivia's usual spot in the courtyard. Her heart pounded in her chest, and she couldn't remember a time she had felt more vulnerable. When she found Olivia, sitting alone, reading a book as though nothing had changed, Natalie felt a wave of panic. Olivia didn't look up as she approached. But the tension in the air was thick. Olivia. Natalie's voice was shaky as she spoke. I know I've done terrible things. I didn't realize what I was doing, and now everything's falling apart. Please, I'm begging you, give me a chance. Don't destroy me completely. Please, I'll do anything. Olivia finally looked up, her eyes calm, her expression unreadable. For a long moment, she said nothing, letting the silence stretch. Natalie felt her anxiety grow. But she didn't dare to speak again. Finally, Olivia spoke, her voice soft but firm. You can't undo what's been done, Natalie, but I'm not going to let you throw your life away completely either. I'll arrange for you to transfer to another school, a smaller one, where you can rebuild yourself. But that's the only second chance you're getting. Natalie's breath caught in her throat. You'll let me go? Olivia nodded slowly. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it because you need to learn that power isn't everything. It's about how you treat others. Maybe, in a smaller school, you'll understand that. Natalie didn't know what to say. She felt a strange sense of relief wash over her, mixed with guilt. Olivia was giving her a chance. But at a price, her pride, her status. Natalie had no choice but to accept it. Thank you all for listening to the story. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and subscribe to support my channel. Thank you.